Trudy McIntosh is live in the studio, and we've heard from the government quite a quick reaction today.
Well, Chris Bowen, the Energy and Climate Minister, believes this policy announcement we just heard from Peter Dutton is a joke. He says there's no detail here, and as such, it has to be branded in that way. It's gone are the days of a small target opposition strategy. Peter Dutton is going big and bold when it comes to his nuclear pitch for Australians, but we've seen senior ministers line up to take potshots at this. They're not afraid of having this debate either. Chris Bowen was critical, the finance minister ahead of the announcement today, saying even if they were to put out a price tag, it's going to be wrong. Think about what happened with Snowy Hydro. That's almost blown out more than double, and it's not even finished yet. Jim Chalmers calling this the dumbest policy idea he's ever seen from an opposition. Have a look.
It's not really an announcement. We know that Mr Dutton wants to slow down the rollout of renewables, and he wants to introduce the most expensive form of energy that's slow to build. But today we've seen no costs, we've seen no gigawatts, we've seen no detail. This is a joke. But it's a serious joke because it threatens our transition.
It might be the dumbest policy ever put forward by a major political party. It is the worst combination of economic and ideological stupidity.
Jim Chalmers at that Australian Energy Conference and Chris Bowen, but they're going a full court press in terms of their response to this. They're happy to have this as the fight. So both sides look comfortable with this battle, but the government does have the state leaders, including Liberal leaders, on board in terms of their view of this.
Yeah, Peter Dutton is facing these twin fights, not only federal Labor, but then all of the states where he's proposing to put these sites are putting up barriers, saying they don't want them here. And this is going to be a big issue. The political calculation, though, Peter Dutton clearly believes Australians support this. If it's so popular and state premiers were seeing that in terms of their polling, why are they coming out then and opposing these projects? In order to actually do this, we're going to need to have the federal moratorium lifted. That requires the Senate to tick that off. And also states which have their own bans are going to have to lift them too. You can see it here. Ahead of the Queensland state election, not just the Labor Premier, but the Liberal leader there, the LNP leader, David Crisafulli, also not supportive. Victorian Premier not on board. The West Australian Premier, I should say, Roger Cook. New South Wales Premier Chris Minns. It is a difficult task ahead for Peter Dutton. He says, ultimately, though, they'll come around to this idea when you throw cash on the table. This is the reaction from premiers so far.
We're not supporting nuclear power. I think our state laws are pretty clear when it comes to planning, but whether there's some overriding constitutional question that he can pursue, I think that's a matter for him. I mean, he's the one who's proposing the policy, but look, our ban stays in place. We're not repealing it.
Nuclear energy is toxic, it's risky, it's more expensive, and it is decades and decades away.
So you can understand David Crisafulli in Queensland ahead of this election, which is coming up. He doesn't want to have this to be the big issue there. But what about in Victoria? They're not facing an election imminently. But this was what David Picciuto, Victorian opposition leader, had to say just a short time ago.
We have no plans for nuclear as a state opposition. It may well be that a future federal government initiates a national discussion.
So Victorian's opposition leader Kieran saying no plans for him. He says the focus should be on the immediate term on that gas problem they have in Victoria. So for Peter Dutton, it's a bold move, but he's certainly facing immediate pushback, not just from the usual corners, but also from some within his own party.